Welcome to another episode of Bum with a Wrench. I'm your host Daniel, as always. I wanted to get out of the heat. Last few days doing those windows and door locks on the car, it's hard in that kind of heat. So what I wanted to do is work on window switches. You can see here, these are the window switches that I picked for the car. I think these are going to work out real well in the center console here. So my plan is to put them in like that. Now the car had this like cubby hole. I tried to look to see exactly what it was. It looks like it just like some kind of cubby hole or something. I couldn't really figure out what it was, but it's not something that I need, and it's a perfect place and perfect size for the relays. So what I did is I got the relays that I wanted and then just kind of lined them up like I thought I would have them. And so my plan is to put driver and passenger relays, obviously front and rear, aren't relays, I'm calling them relays, switches. I don't know what I'm thinking about today. Maybe I was thinking of doing the relays in the back of the car today, and so my mind is on relays. I don't know. Anyways, window switches. And then I thought, I got this spot here that's open pretty good, and so I want to put two more of them. And basically what I want to do is control the door locks, and then on the other one, I want to control the electric top. So it's going to look something like this. You'll have your driver window, driver door window, and then driver side quarter panel window, and then passenger side window and passenger side quarter, and then one of these will be door lock, and top up and down. I thought that'd be neat, kind of keeps them all in a row, real clean, real nice. The sheen and everything kind of matches the center console real nice. But one of the problems that I found in doing this is, one, they've got these little clips. That's kind of what holds them in. Obviously, the hole is about the size of the whole entire little case right there. So if they're not just going to clip in, so I need to do something about that. And obviously, I don't need them to sit into a pocket like they are. So what I did was I went and got my Dremel out, and I just dremeled the pocket out. And so now we can just take that pocket off. And so what I'll do is I'm thinking I'm going to use the plastic from the pocket to make a brace basically for each one of these to fit into. So each one of these will fit into that plastic. And then what I'll do is I'll shape the back side of this so that this can go in and sit real nice. Now if you notice, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see. I'll try maybe use the big camera there. It's got a curvature to it, And so when the switches sit in there, after you line them all up, they're kind of on a curve. So I can't have this piece be completely flat. I need to bend this also onto a curve. Not that big of a deal, not that hard. So what I did was, when I cut it out long. That way I can set the depth, because as you can see, the little clips on these are really close to the flange here at the top. And so I want to be able to, I'm going to cut this out and then heat this up and bend it to that shape. Find the distance that I need because this needs to clip into this, and then this needs to sit on that little edge right there. And so that these will actually sit kind of more flush with the center console. So these are a tiny bit longer. There is some plastic little boogers and stuff that I need to trim off. So I'm going to get a piece of sandpaper. I'm just going to trim all of these up real nice so that they slip into that little pocket real well. And then once they're in there, then I think all I need to do is basically trim this almost to that little landing ledge right there, just shy of it. And then this will actually glue to the bottom. I have a plastic welder. I figured maybe I would attempt to plastic weld this on. Some plastics do okay with plastic welding. When I was cutting this, it was melting pretty well, so this might actually do pretty well. Plastic welding. There is different types of plastic, just so you know. So if you ever go to do plastic welding, when you buy the plastic welding filler, there is different types of plastic, so you kind of want to know what kind of plastic that you have. That way you can get the right filler. But a lot of times what you can do is just heat the edge up and melt the two together. One of the other reasons I like using this part here is because it's the same type of plastic, from the same mold, from the same everything. So if I go to heat this up to melt it to this, they're gonna blend really well because they're the same type of plastic. So that's the plan. That's where I'm gonna start today. Just cleaning these up, getting everything kind of ready and on track. You know, I'll cut this piece out and start working in that direction. So let me get some of this cleaned up, and then I'll bring you back in and kind of show you the process as I go through it, and we'll see how this turns out. All right, guys. Okay, so I've got some of this cleaned up. What I did is I went through all the switches, and you know, just like anything else plastic you're gonna find these days, it's got that little edge on it that's from the mold. And so I want to go through and I want to massage all of these switches so that all of those sharp edges that hang off from the mold are gone. And so basically what you do is just take a razor blade, and you're going to want to just drag it across real lightly, and you can kind of see that fuzz just, you know, come right off. And so I'm not pressing real hard. If you've ever done this, you'll find that sometimes when you drag it across, it leaves like jagged marks. The way you stop that is when you hold your razor blade, just hold it like this between the two fingers with your thumb, and then just put a little bend on it. And then that will actually keep the razor blade from chattering as it goes across whatever you're trying to scrape clean. So now, you know, it didn't take a lot to do this. Just want to make sure, go through and make sure all of the little casting flaws are cleaned up. Obviously being real careful not to hit the top. I'm not at a 90-degree angle to it. I'm always at a farther angle. That way you're not getting into the side where you can see. And then as they sit in the center console, you can see that they're kind of tight, which is okay, because I still have to cut this piece here that these are actually going to clip into. So it's okay that they're a little tight. They do fit in there. In the corner, they're a lot tighter than I would like, but it'll still pop in and go into place. So that's all that matters. So as long as I can get them in there, they'll be a little bit tight. I might have to massage the center console just a little bit more to make them fit, but for the most part, you know, they go right in there. So like that. Back's not in, but whatever. You get the idea. You just got to keep playing with it, basically. When you're doing something like this, you just keep playing with it and playing with it and playing with it until it finally does what you want it to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut this open. Basically, I want to remove this top piece, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount all the switches in this top piece in a row, and then that is actually going to glue or plastic weld up underneath of this. So I still have to go up under here and trim all this down to the right depth, right? Because I cut this long like you'd want to do, so that you can come back and trim it all, but I need to know basically how this is going to fit in here. It's going to be real tight, so I'm not going to have a lot of space. I'm probably going to end up cutting this all the way up to right at that lip right there. I don't want to cut the lip itself, so, and then what I can do is I can take these little metal clips and I can actually tweak them a little bit to allow it to have a little bit of wiggle room in this area, so that it can actually, you know, it does, when I clip them in here, they won't sit tight. They'll sit a little bit loose. That way when I stick this underneath and then I go to click these in, it can actually sit on this ledge, which will hold it tight in the piece and yet still clip into this piece. So I don't really do a lot of work these days on camera, so I thought maybe I'd cut this out on camera. You know, I don't know if that's something you guys are gonna want to see or not. So here we go. Now this piece is shaped, if you look at it, it's wider on this side than on this side, right? So I'm gonna cut the wider part. And I'm gonna cut it on the side because I want to try and get as much of the plastic as I possibly can get. And I don't have to be careful with this, you just gotta cut it. I always set the Dremel a little bit lower in speed, because if you set it too high, it'll just end up melting the plastic, and then right behind where you cut, it's just gonna melt it right back together again. So I always set it a little bit lower, kind of seems to kind of keep the heat out of it. Make sure your fingers aren't in the way when you do this. See how that stuff is hot right there. Don't want to be touching that. Hot plastic will burn the crap out of you. There we go. Just turn the Dremel off. Set it up so it doesn't melt the couch. Again, you want to be real careful with this. It's gonna be hot. That's not too bad right there. That's pretty good. If you kind of jump on it a little bit quick, you can get a lot of those edges off. Just take the little Dremel tool, clean this up a little bit. Now again, I left this long because remember, this was the pocket that was in there. So I don't have a lot of width here, right? It's only the width of the part. So if I start chewing, you know, just not paying attention and cutting it short, I'm not going to be able to fit it. So never cut toward yourself like that. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. This is what I'm doing today. It's nice to be able to sit in the air conditioning and work on something for once. That's really what this is about. I mean, you can call it lazy, you can call it, you know, procrastinating, you can call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it's still work that needs to get done. So, are there other things I could do to the car? Sure. But at the end of the day, this has still got to get done. So, it's taking a break from something because of frustration or heat. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not frustrated with the car at all. It's just wicked hot. I think today's high 90s. You know, you guys sitting in Arizona are probably like, psh, that ain't nothing. That's a nice winter day. I don't live in Arizona. I will never live in Arizona. You can keep that. Honestly, I've always loved the East Coast. Maybe someday. I hope maybe to retire. I've been watching this YouTube channel, In Too Deep. This 20-year-old kid, you know, buying motor yachts and motoring down to Florida on the summers and working on the boat and doing all that kind of stuff. I tell you, it brings me back to my 20s. I lived on a boat for a couple of years as a live-aboard. It was a 33-foot Chris Craft cabin cruiser. It was a Catalina, Chris Craft Catalina. It was a cool boat. A little small, you know, but honestly, I miss that so much. That was so much fun. And so, you know, watching this YouTube channel, In Too Deep, and that's basically what he did. He's 20 years old, you know, decided that I guess he had an automotive shop he sold, and started, you know, he bought a yacht, and anything over, I think, 30 feet or 25 feet. I can't remember, they call it a yacht. It's considered a yacht. But anyways, he buys a boat, starts doing the boating life, which, man, I'm telling you, once that bites you, it's kind of like cars. You can never really get it out of your system. It's so much fun. So relaxing and beautiful. It's definitely an escape from the world. You can just get out there, and whether it be on the ocean or, you know, through these little waterways, which back east is cool. I'm watching these lives back east. Back east is so cool. I've never done any boating back there. They have so many waterways and stuff. Man, I'm telling you, if I would have been back there when I was on my boat, I probably would have never left it. Maybe someday after I retire, I can talk my wife into getting onto a big old 70, 75 foot Carver or something. Anyways, so that's what I'm going to be doing. Sitting here dreaming about boats, apparently. And then trying to make this fit that whilst holding these. You know? Next time you're at a car show or something and you see, you know, a car with all these neat little custom pieces, this is what it takes. Just sitting down and wasting away your life trying to fit window and door lock switches into a center console. You know, it takes a lot of effort to just sit here and make that. And then after it's made, no one will ever pay attention to it. It'll work totally perfect and look totally awesome, and no one will ever think twice about it. But it'll look really cool. If you just slap it together and you put a piece of sheet metal right there and you pop the switches in there, people are definitely going to see that. So I guess it's better if nobody ever pays attention to it again. It means you did your job right. So anyways, I'm going to keep working along on this, and then I'll bring you guys back in and we'll see how it looks. All right, guys. Well, I had to take a short break on the switches for the center console. The console's over here because I can't find my super glue. So I started making the piece that goes in the center here, and okay. So I started making the piece, and if you look, you can see like this switch is good, and then this switch is good, and then I messed up. I was holding the piece and I was telling myself I gotta go up a little, and I must have been holding it the wrong way, and I went down a little, and by the time I went up a little, whoops, now the switch don't fit anymore. So had to make a new panel. So I made a new panel. There it is. But instead of doing this off of the center console like I was going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in the center console. So I trimmed this one up so it fits the center console just perfectly. But if you notice, the center console's got a little bit of a crown to it, right? So what I need to do is I need to glue this edge and then work my way across, gluing this completely flush. So in the end, you have this really nice block-off plate that is centered in the panel and glued in place. I'm going to use a little bit of super glue right on the edge just as a way to tack it in place. And then from the underneath, I'm going to go under and then bond it with some epoxy. And then I'll go ahead at that point and then clean this edge up down here. And then I'm going to go ahead at that point and then I'll start marking out my switches. Now, I did a bunch of calculations with a pair of calipers and whatnot, and basically got all the dimensions for the switch. And the way that I'm going to keep from messing up again is I'm going to transfer those dimensions and what I need to a piece of tape, and then I'll tape over top of this, pull out the centers where I need my switches to go so they land perfectly in the center console. And then in the end, all I got to do is clip all these things in there, and then I'm good to go. So that's how I'm going to finish that, but I don't think the glue is going to show up until today sometime. Unfortunately, when I started having things shipped to this building, packages just don't like to show up or whatever. I'm the only guy here, so if I step out for lunch, of course, that's the time when the guy's going to come. I'm not here, he has to come the next day. So to solve all that problems, I just have everything shipped to my house, and then everything gets delivered. I bring it all in the next day. So that's what we're gonna do. No problem with that. Really, honestly, that was just to take a break from the shop, sit in some air conditioning, play around with a file and a, Dremel tool, and cut out some switches. It has to be done. Doesn't have to be done at this exact moment, but again, wanted to sit in some air conditioning because it is getting hot out there. Not at all like that song. It is miserable. So anyways, what I did get in is a whole bunch of wire. I do have a bunch more wire to get. This is my 18 gauge. This is my 14 gauge. I got some red and black molded together. Again, all copper wire. I went ahead and placed an order today for some 8 gauge because I do need 8 gauge for a couple different items. Let's get outside and I'll show you what I'm talking about and where I need 8 gauge and where I'm at and what I need to focus on. And then on the side, when I want to take a break, I'll come in here and keep working on this thing. But for now, let's get back out to the car. All right, back out here on the car. I did a little bit of work off camera. What I needed to do was get a relay box installed in the car. So when we're doing the wiring harness in the front here, you really got to think of the steps that you need to take in order to get things lined up right so that you're not going back and having to modify. If I were to just hack the harness up and start running things the way I think they need to be run instead of doing things in the proper order, I'll end up having to come back and redo a lot of my work. In order for me to hack up any bit of the wiring and start to wire any bit of the lighting, I need to know first where all my relays are going to be, where all my fuses are going to be, where all that stuff is going to be, because that's going to tell me where all the wires need to go. So I solved that problem the other day off camera. Let me show you what I went ahead and did. So if you take a look down here, right here next to the overflow, which the overflow is not mounted. It's just, I just have it set in there in the car because I was using that for reference, because I need to make sure that this relay box here that I made fits in the car and fits nice. So this is basically the box that's going to control all of the relays for the headlights, the fans, and the AC clutch. There is one extra one in there because there's 6. So there's one extra relay in there in case I need to add something to it, or in case you're ever out on the road, you have a relay fail and you need an extra relay. There's an extra one in this box. So that's nice. What I was trying to get out of this, which made it really hard, was how do I put a bunch of electrical in this car without messing up the overall look of the car. And so you can see this box barely sticks out. It's tucked up in the corner. It's out of the way of my overflow. Again, that's just sat in there. Let's put this over here. Haven't mounted that up yet. I'll get around to it. So that's the box. And so I went ahead and made the bracket and got everything set up. Now what I need to do is I need to get in here and start doing the wiring. But before I do that, you notice there's a bunch of red wires. And there's also a bunch of grounds that need to be grounded as well. So my plan with how to deal with all of those power wires down in there, because each one of those relays needs a power wire going to the battery, and each one of those relays also needs a ground. Now, I could take and just stack a bunch of grounds and bolt it to the frame, and that would work just fine. Obviously, that's not what I'm going to do, because it's going to look like I just stacked a bunch of wires and bolted it to the frame. So around here somewhere in one of these cars or one of these boxes, I have some what I call bus bars. It's basically like a power distribution plate. So my plan is on each side of this this fuse block. Let me pull this thing out of here. It's just sat in there. This is what it looks like. So this is the bracket that I made for it. Simple, easy bracket. So my plan is on this side of the bracket, there's going to be another bracket that comes off and comes back. So on the side right here, I'm going to mount one of the bus bars, probably the positive, because on this side it gets pretty close to the fender and I don't want it to ground out and mess up anything. On this side, I'm going to have the same thing. It's going to be a little bracket that hangs out with the bus bar on this side for the grounds. So that's going to give me all my ground wires will go right to that bus bar. All my positive wires will go right to this bus bar. That's also going to give me a power source for other things that I need in the vehicle, such as the alternator. So the alternator wire is a 8-gauge wire that's going to run across the car, across the motor, and up to the alternator. It is a long trip that the electricity has to take in order to get to that alternator, because the power comes in from the battery across the car. It's going to go to another bus bar that's inside the car on a relay fuse box inside the car. So basically the power wire is going to come out, go onto the starter. From the starter, it'll go onto an 8-gauge wire that'll come around the car, go onto the bus bar, and then off the bus bar, back around the car to the alternator. It's a bit of a trip, but wire and electricity doesn't care too much as long as you have the right size wire. That bus bar will be connected directly to the battery via the back of the back of the starter. For the bus bar on the inside of the car, the positive and negative battery terminals that come down the side of the car, I'm going to run an 8-gauge wire back up to the battery. So the bus bar on the inside of the car that handles all of the power on the inside of the car will be directly connected to the battery. The one on the outside will be directly connected to the battery via the starter. So again, having to think about how I'm going to do this before I just jump in and start hacking stuff up. Those are the things I need to do. So first order of business today, it's already getting pretty late in the day, is to get those bus bars, find them wherever they're at in this big old pile of wreck, and then get those brackets made, get them mounted to the side, and then get that back in the car. On this bracket, I do need to drill a hole in the top. I'm going to set it back in the car the way it was, drill through the fender into this here so they both line up perfectly. And then I'm going to put a riv nut in this. So when I slip it up behind the car, you just stick a quarter 20 bolt and it'll bolt this right in place. Same with the bottom here against the inner fender there. It'll just bolt down to the bottom with a riv nut in the actual inner fender right there. So before I can get into any of this, I need to do that. So that way I know where everything's going, where everything's coming. Then I can finally get into finishing up the wiring on the front of this car. This was hard. I know it doesn't look hard, but it was. Finding the right box, because there are dozens of them out there. Finding the right box for me that's waterproof, that's the right size, right shape, right mounting points, that's gonna fit in the car the way I want it to, was quite difficult. I believe this is for a boat or a, can't remember, I think this one was for a boat. It might have been for a, like a side-by-side or something. I can't quite remember. But it works great for what I need. So now that I got this handled, let me do those two things, and then we can start wiring on the car. Let me go track those down. I'll bring you in for mounting one of them, and then I'll bring you in for mounting it on the car. So give me a minute, or probably a couple, and let's get this done. All right, guys. All right, so this is what I decided to go with. Looks a little crazy, huh? So I have my box like I did before, how it was mounted. Then what I decided to do was just do some little standoffs to hold the bus bars. So now you can kind of see what I was talking about with having power and ground. And so this is going to now solve all the problems that I was going to have with trying to find powers and grounds underneath the hood. Now they're all here. I like having them here by the fuses and relays. Let me show you what the inside of this box looks like so that you can kind of understand why I'm using it. If I can get it open. This thing is watertight, so the clips are a little different. It's got a nice seal in it. But you can see it's got 6 relays, 6 fuses to go along with the relays. And then of course you can change the fuse depending on what you're applying it to. So that'll go over there in the side where it was. The fuses will only be for these relays, so if there's other fuses that you need throughout the car, you'll have to put them in. But honestly, there's no other fuses that I need, at least underneath the hood. So everything else is fused on the inside. So, but anytime I need to put power or ground to something, so like the headlights, I have the relay for the headlights in here that's going to supply the power, but there's still a grounding wire that comes off of the headlight plug. It'll go back and tie into here, along with the ground for the trinary switch, for the AC, which we're going to get into. That's probably next. We're going to get into headlights, that trinary switch for the AC, and wiring up everything up in here. I also need a negative for the heater control valve, and a few other negative lines, that kind of stuff. So that's going to all tie into here. Any powers that I need underneath the hood are going to tie into this side. You'll notice on the power side, there's a lot more connections than on the negative side. The reason I did that is because, you know, you're always looking for power. So power over here, and then negative on the other side. So what's going to happen is like I was saying, there's an 8-gauge wire that's going to come, and it'll go on to one of these lugs, and then I'll also have this other lug at the bottom. The other big lug will go over it, and that'll be for the alternator. The smaller ones here, those are fine for these wires here. They'll tie in. Each one of these reds will go over there, and then the anything else that I need power for will tie into there. As far as the grounding side, on one of these big lugs here on the end, it'll go across the fender, dip down, and then on the other side, back where they originally put, let me show you, where they originally had the the ground strap in this car. You can see right down right there where it's connected to the frame. So I'll have a connection there, and this just goes up and meets up the bell housing. Basically, it's a grounding strap from the frame to the motor. And so I'll put a connection there that'll come up through the fender and then go across and then over there. So that'll supply me a good ground for the for that grounding bar. So that's a good portion of figuring out where all my powers and grounds are going to be coming from. I really couldn't do any modification to the harness until I knew that position. Similar reason why I haven't really done much to the trunk. I did mount that relay, but I haven't done anything past that because I need to locate the same position on the inside of the car, which I have an idea of where it's going to go, but until I actually make the location permanent, then I'll know exactly where everything's going to go. Then at that point, then I can start adding powers and grounds and that kind of stuff coming in and going to where I need them to go. That's a very important part when you're starting this, because if I were to just start hacking the harness up, where does everything go? Where's its path? Where does it need to go? Now I know underneath the hood. So that's pretty much going to do it for today. I know that was short. I kind of got wrapped up. I started this morning watching No Nonsense Know-How. I love that show. His wife's pregnant. My wife's pregnant too, so I kind of relate. Although my wife doesn't work on cars, his does. I've been watching her. They just released a video on them working on her new Toyota RAV4. She calls it. It's like a 98 or something like that. I'll tell you, it's more entertaining watching her work on it. Not for any comedic reasons, other than just sitting there. You're gritting your teeth. It's so captivating, and because you want to help her, you're screaming through the screen, no, use the box end wrench or grab the Milwaukee, ratchet, and I kind of got wrapped up in it. And then of course my dad called and we were talking 312Y blocks and all kinds of stuff. So today was a short day, not to go off the subject here, but I kind of got sidetracked, we'll call it. So anyways, that's where we're at. What I'm going to do going forward today, what I want to do is finish up, is I'm just going to do the mounting holes. So I'm going to drill the hole in the fender, drill the hole in the inner fender well, mount that. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and paint it and get it. I'm going to paint the bracket black, of course, the same as the inner fender well, so everything matches. And I want it to fall into the background. I don't want you to see that. Now keep in mind, these bus bars, they're on the back side, so you're not going to see them. They're going to be up in there. You won't see them at all, which is great. There's plenty of space in this cavity for them where they won't be close to any kind of metal or anything else like that. Now, if somebody runs into you here, yeah, you might have a problem. But, I mean, if somebody runs into your car, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. So, I mean, you engineer and you plan for as much as you can, but then hopefully nobody hits, this part of the car here, because this will definitely ground out and probably start a fire. But there is a large cavity in there, so it would take a pretty good hit for them to get into these bus bars. But anyways, let me get working on that. I want to get this mounted. I want to get this painted today before I go home. When we come in the morning, we're going to start wiring this. Before I do that tonight, before I leave, I want to go over the video and see how long this video is already. I know we've done a little bit on the switches for the center console and now a little bit with this. I'm trying to keep these videos a little bit shorter, but let me get this mounted up. I'll get it painted up. Tomorrow we'll come in, we'll see where we're at and go from there. All right, guys, see you then. Welcome back to the channel. Got the relays, fuses, bus bar, brackets, and everything all mounted up in the car. It's all looking good. Pretty excited about starting to finally pull wire on this car. It's definitely been a long time coming, but you really got to be prepared and set up and ready for that before you start doing that. Otherwise, really, it's going to cause you a lot of problems. So now that I know where everything goes, and where all the wires are actually going to terminate to, I can actually start now modifying the lighting harness to incorporate the fans, the trinary switch, which I have to still put in, and the new headlights, which require relays. So, yeah, so that's where we're at. That's what we're going to start doing. Unfortunately, that's going to be quite a bit of work. We're already a little bit into this episode, so I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here and then start filming the next episode, which is going to be modification of the whole forward harness here to incorporate AC, fans, headlights, and getting this all hooked up and ready to go. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you that have stuck around and followed the build on this car. This car has definitely been a challenge for me, and so, you know, I really appreciate all you guys. But as always, until next time, guys.